was just another day of hustle bustle in our school. The sound of chairs being dragged, the ringing of bells in between slots, and students laughing out loud. If this were an ordinary day, I would be roaming around in the science park with my friends. But I was sitting in the corner of my class, alone, scared to look up because someone would notice that I no longer had any friends. Because someone would judge that I no longer had any friends. I was silently sitting in that corner, but all kinds of emotions washed over me. Dejection, fear, hopelessness, which eventually turned into frustration. I used to be a very attentive student in class, but more than often, I found myself zoning out and losing myself in the middle of a thought. It was clear that this supposed issue had had profound effects on the other aspects of my life. My mom always said that friends part ways. I went from the person who always had company to a person who had none at all. I went from the most active person in class to someone who'd sit in a corner and read books about power and influence. Well, one such book was called The 48 Laws of Power, whose second law said, never put too much trust in your friends. When I looked up, I realized quite the opposite. People were trusting their friends just fine enough, and they were happy. And that was the kind of happiness I was aiming for. So I asked myself, who should I believe, and why do we sacrifice so much to these fragile bonds? While these bonds were the ones that brought me happiness all these years. So I was stuck in a tussle. What followed was a 3-month period of deep introspection, not only in me, but in the environment I was existing in. And no, this introspection was not on sunshine and rainbows. I cried almost every day. I had constant self-doubt. I was on the brink of breaking down, and whenever anyone asked me how I was, I would just put on a smile and say, I'm fine. But I was not. I was crushed under the crippling fear of doubt and even anxiety. My parents worried for me, and so did my teachers, asking me constantly, Beta, is everything fine? When I told them about the situation, they had one question and one question only. Why did your friends do this? Well, that at that time was the million-dollar question. But amidst those times of negativity and darkness, I found strength. Because everyone around me was happy, and I was not. I wanted what the others had, and I was tired of being in the constant sad state of mind. And like every other life lesson, I wanted to get back on my feet after I had been knocked cold out of my boots. I slowly yet steadily found confidence, and I sought myself on a new path. A path of newfound responsibility towards myself, a path that my true self chose, which wasn't trying the ways of a book or a YouTube video. It was a path that I chose from my own experiences. Yes, it was an unexplored path, but one that would take me to new heights. I started smiling again. I started paying attention in class, and finally, I started feeling a little happy. And as if this God said, I stumbled across a shloka that spoke to me. Mahajanasya sansar kasya no nati karak padam prastitam toyam dhate mukta fanshriya. This shloka made me realize the importance of good friends and company in our lives. This shloka rightly quoted that friends are like droplets on a leaf. These droplets help the leaf grow. And the leaf, it turns these mere droplets into beautiful white pearls. The key wasn't to put trust in no one. It wasn't trusting everyone blindly. But the key was putting your trust and energy in the right people. I learned a lot on this journey. Firstly, you cannot force friendships. You cannot go up to a person and tell them to be friends with you, right? Well, connections are built over time. They are built on trust and shared memories. Secondly, we must understand that quality is better than quantity. As an extroverted person, I prided myself over my vast social circle. But when my closest friends distanced themselves, I found that this vast circle reduced to a mere god. This painful and cold realization taught me that the quality of friendships is much more important with the number of friends we have. And all experiences have their own complexities. Many ups and downs misguiding us and putting us on the wrong paths. But throughout my journey, I realized that it is our family that keeps us grounded. They are the lighthouse that guide us home when we are lost at sea. They are the warm embrace that covers us when the world seems too cold and unforgiving. Times like these, when my parents stood by my side, gave me energy to keep going, gave me enthusiasm to just give life one more shot, and also gave me the zeal to spread this message. So from my heart to yours, I tell you one thing and only one thing. Embrace the ups and downs, for they're all part of reaching your peak. You will find your place, and you will find your people. On that note, thank you.
Hey, as I stand here, I'm living a life I once couldn't have imagined for myself. I live in a large home with my mother, my budding mama, her daughters, and our dog Chet. My days are filled with simple joy, happily studying in school, going downstairs to play, watching horror stories with my mother, screaming and laughing at jump scares. Finally, everything feels right. But getting to this point of my life, that the road was long, uncertain, and often painful. I was born in Delhi, but I grew up in Nepal, where we lived in a joint family in the village. My days were very different from what they are now. I would wake up at 5:30 a.m., go to school for 12 hours, come home and study for another 3 hours. But the exhaustion wasn't the worst part. It was the emptiness. No facilities, no opportunities, no encouragement, and not even a fan to comfort us in the heat. Things were very different for my mother. Overnight, she had to adapt to the village life, completely different from the city. She had to start working on the farm. Day and night, she kept going without a complaint. Her hands blistered, exhausted. She would even get sick frequently, but it was all for me, so I could have a better future. After a few years, my father left Nepal, chasing the promise of a better income in another country. At first, his support reached us, and he would call regularly. But slowly, the calls faded, and then they stopped altogether. His family turned cold, telling my mother they had no reason to fund my education, as I was a girl. They forced us to leave, taking away the roof over our heads. I saw my dream of a bright future shatter before my eyes. It was unjust, unfair, and cruel. My cousin brothers would be pampered, showered with gifts, love, and affection, while I was left wondering why my worth was so little in their eyes. I didn't quite understand it then, and even now I fail to understand, because according to me, we are all equal in our intelligence, our capacity, and our dreams to shape our destinies. My mother knew that my education was of utmost importance, and she refused to give up. She gathered all her courage for the bravest decision of her life, choosing to return to India and start over. Moving from Nepal to Delhi was challenging. I was hit with a wave of noise, chaos. Different language confused me, as all I knew was Nepali. Amidst the bustling city life, I longed for the peaceful sound of nature. During this time of uncertainty, my mother became my anchor. She was employed by a woman whom she knew. I called her Badi Mama. Badi Mama opened her heart and home to us, loving us as her own family. She became our guardian angel. Badi Mama recognized my potential. She is the one who taught me English and introduced me to Cybersecurity, an organization where passionate teachers expanded my knowledge. And then came the biggest opportunity of my life, DPS Shiksha Kendra, the school that opened all the doors and paved the way for a better life. Here, I wasn't just studying, I was giving speeches, participating in assemblies and events. I was living my life to the fullest. Confidence in myself, in my worth, in my potential. And for the first time, I found me too. Teachers who saw my spark and friends who trusted me and pushed me to reach higher heights. Somewhere in this transformation, I discovered my calling, fashion design. I remember when I was younger, sometimes I pretended to be a doctor or a reporter on TV. And whatever I dreamt of doing, my mom always supported me. When fashion designing captured my heart, she and my buddy mama supported that dream too. I designed dresses for my dolls from scraps of fabric. I crochet bags for my friends from leftover yarn. As my mother has taught me to create beauty from whatever we have. My dream goes beyond runway shows and magazine covers. What I dream of is the day I can give my mother a home filled with warmth, laughter, and comfort. Today, I can finally thank her for choosing me over everything else. I await the day when I can tell her no more long working hours, no more constant worry and stress, only happiness. All I want is her to see is happy. Looking back, I don't see this as a story of our struggle, but a belief that we were worthy of something better, that we deserve more than we were given, and that no one had the right to tell us otherwise.
Now, after listening to these two inspiring stories and such eloquent speakers, it will be difficult to match the vibe, but I'll try my best. Today, I'm going to tell you my story, which is still a work in progress. All of us have our lives planned like a neat timetable. Everything sorted, all planned. Subject A at 9 a.m., subject B at 10, lunch break at 12, everything planned. I too had a plan. I grew up in a family of teachers. Both my parents were teachers, my aunts were teachers, and I saw them inspire lives. I saw them change lives. And I also wanted that for myself. My parents had a different plan though, but destiny aligned with my plan and I became a teacher. And to top it all, I became a physics teacher. It is not easy being a teacher. You know what is the scariest part? It is not the students. It is not even the curriculum. It is that moment when you realize that you have 30 pairs of eyes watching you do math on the board in real time. That is what I realized very early in my career. During one of my first physics lessons, and I am talking about more than 20 years back, during one of those lessons, I was solving a long, tricky numerical on the board. And in my mind, I was an Einstein. But on the board that day, I was a confused calculator. So halfway through the problem, I messed up. Big time. The room went silent. My students stared at me. I stared at the board. What had I done? How could I do this? My heart was racing. And every part of me wanted to simply erase that from the board quickly, pretend it never happened, and just move on. But then I looked at my students once again. Some of them were as nervous as I was. So I picked up a little courage and said, well, that did not go as planned. Let's try to solve it together. So we retraced our steps, found the mistake, laughed a lot, but eventually solved it. That day, without realizing, without planning, I had given my very first lesson of a growth mindset. I could have run away. I could have just covered it all up, swept it aside. But then I would be giving a wrong message to my students. I would be giving a message that mistakes are failures. Mistakes are not failures. Mistakes are very powerful lessons for you to grow. After that day, something changed inside my class. My students, they started asking questions. They started answering questions. They started raising their hands to say that, ma'am, can I try this? Something shifted. That is when I realized the true meaning of a growth mindset. My students were no longer afraid to make a mistake, and neither was I. When you say that I can't do this, I can't do maths, I can't do physics, I can't solve this problem, what are we doing? We are making ourselves a wall. That is not growth happening. But if you say that I can't do this yet, then you have opened a door, a possibility, an opportunity to grow. One small word, yet, has made all the difference. You have changed from a fixed to a growth mindset. That is the power of yet. Let's try this right here, right now. Think of something that you struggle with. Just say it inside your head. Got it? Now add the word yet in the end and say it again. Feels different, doesn't it? That is the power of yet. You know, this is not true only inside the classrooms. All success stories which you have heard, they began as not yet stories. Einstein did not speak fluently till the age of 9. J.K. Rowling was rejected by 12 publishers before Harry Potter. Michael Jordan was not accepted in his school team. And the recent one, you can see me standing right here. This is my not yet story. I have always held back from speaking in public outside classrooms. Inside the classroom, I'm a bond. But outside those spaces, I refrained myself. Because I was in my comfort zone. But then I realized that I have also made a wall. I also need to grow. So I challenged myself. And here I am. Because growth doesn't happen from perfection. It happens from persistence, from consistency. Even our brain is a muscle. If we simply lift feathers all our life, we are not going to grow. We are not going to build any muscle. But if you lift something heavy, you might drop it sometimes. You might sweat it out, but you will grow. That is what our mind needs, our brain needs. It needs a challenge to grow. So, life sometimes may alter your timetable, but you don't have to feel sad because it is going to take you at that very moment where you are supposed to be. And it is also going to give you tools to make it right. Next time, when life gives you lemons, what will you do? No, don't settle for a lemonade. Plant those seeds and make yourself, grow yourself an orchard. Because that is what carpe diem really means. It doesn't mean that you have to shine in that moment alone. It means that you dare to say that I am not there yet, but I'll get there. Because in the end, life is not about being flawless. It is about being daring to say, it is about being daring to grow one yet at a time. Thank you.
Your future.
Well, for me, it was a small faded square, a floppy disk. During lockdown, while most of us were scrolling through time, I stumbled upon a piece of it. My dad found one of these disks and blew dust off it as he made it work. The screen flickered to life, revealing an essay written decades ago, words frozen in time. How could something so fragile, so outdated, still hold memories even when matter decays? That was my spark, not just to admire technology, but to delve deep into it. It was from that moment of wonder that my interest began to shift. From admiring how the past was preserved to uncovering how the present was built. I began to wonder, what hides behind the screen? How does a simple click connect the world? How could something built on zeros and ones understand something as complex as us? That curiosity pulled me into the world of cybersecurity, where silence is a battlefield and code is a weapon. My journey started simple, watching YouTube tutorials on how networks and operating systems work, pursuing free online courses, and testing my skills in real-world simulations through online labs. Soon, I tackled puzzles on TryHackMe and earned certifications. Each challenge, each bug solved taught me that cybersecurity isn't about breaking systems, it's about understanding them. But soon I realized curiosity had a cost too. I would sit there in front of my screen at 2 a.m., wondering if I was even made for this. Whenever I learned something new, a new error would appear. While others my age were chasing medals, I was chasing some missing semicolons. Doubt became my shadow. But with each attempted hurdle, persistence became my life. I realized the system doesn't crash to stop you, it crashes to test you. And then came the day of the test. It was 16 June 2025 when everything detonated. Yes, the day of the global massive data breach that rendered 16 billion credentials leaked to hackers, and also the very day when my mother's accounts were hit. Everything felt silent except for the soft buzz of my system's cooling fans. My mom's phone began to scream with alerts, password resets, sign-in attempts that multiplied like a storm front. For a second, I just sat there, the sound of my own breath echoing in the room. Then the map lit up. Lucknow, Kanyakumari, Mumbai, a point in Islamabad, then an address in Azerbaijan I couldn't even place. Each new pin felt like a ripple of panic traveling through the room. The clock on the corner of my screen counted down in a way I had never noticed before. I traced the breach trail, city to city, IP to IP, until I found it. A single vulnerability. Time. I remember thinking in a single absurd breath. 25 seconds. 25 seconds to stop a cascade. It felt like someone else were typing for me. Suddenly, systems felt less like tools and more like lifelines. Everything was a blur of red, blue, red and yellow. Every time I hesitated, I could hear another breached mailbox, another compromised photo, another stolen name. The room continued to remain silent, except for my rhythmic typing. Then finally, the last alert lightened up my screen, and everything came to a standstill. I finally sealed the breach. There was no crowd cheering, no cinematic swagger, just my mother's quiet exhale and her fragile smile. I felt hollow and strangely enormous at once, exhausted and humbled by how close we had come to losing things that mattered. That night taught me how brittle security can be and how our decisions can decide whether our digital lives remain safe or vanish into noise. In the end, I didn't just learn to secure devices. I learned to secure doubt, to face crashes, both personal and digital, and reboot. The more I explored the cyber world, the more I recognized the human one. The clearer one truth became. It's not just skill that defines a hacker, it's the intention. As I took a sigh of relief I was amazed to see how the same clicks, codes, and craft have the power to protect a digital identity and create chaos. And that's when I understood. Cybersecurity isn't about having control. It's about choosing responsibility. Because at the end, every command you write carries a choice. To harm or to help. And I chose to help. In this world where one kind of virus can break systems and another can break spirits, we need defenders, not just of networks, but of empathy, awareness, and hope. Because cybersecurity isn't about decoding systems. It's about decoding ourselves and learning to restart no matter how many times we crash. Thank you.
This one question has stayed with me to every place I've been to. And it always had a certain sinking grasp on me. Do I be funny or do I be witty? Do I give my name or does that go without saying? Describe yourself in what manner? By my interests, by what I do, where I'm from? As for someone who hated this question, I sure had to answer it a lot. Because throughout my life, walking into rooms with unknown people was a common occurrence. I still remember my first time shifting. It was from Delhi to Mumbai. The younger me was so scared in the plane, buckling her seatbelt, but still happy enough to get the window seat. I compensated moving cities with 3 years of crowd watching time. I got to my new class in my new school and I introduced myself with, "Good morning, my name is Trisha Bajaj. I'm 7 years old. I just shifted here from Delhi and I want to be a dancer when I grow up." Then I shifted on to Powai. And this time my answer to my new art class was, "Hello everybody, my name is Trisha and I'm so excited to meet you all." Then again I shifted to Thane. And this time I greeted the kids on my new football team with, "Hey, I'm Trish. I find writing and music pretty cool." I still cringe thinking about myself back then. But these are only 3 of the 1,000 descriptions I've stitched together based on what felt most like me in that moment. Yet every single one is so distinct from the rest. A dancer on the stage or an artist with her easel. A taekwondo champion biting her medal or a baker with her sweets. I went from being the most quiet in the room to being the one people need quiet time from. How can I be so many people? Which one of them was me? I joined art classes not because it piqued my interest. I couldn't draw a straight line, I still can't. But because it was my only way of making friends in my new society. It got me thinking, was I simply at the mercy of life's changes? I adapted to every new circumstance that came my way. But in this process, was I slowly forgetting who I was? Moving cities felt like walking myself into a maze. When I was in this maze, the most and least I could do in this uncharted territory was to try out different routes, gain different experiences. If I was lucky, it gave me the chance to choose between another right or left. But most of the times I bumped into a dusty concrete wall. But as I started over again and again, with every other turn I explored, I got a clearer picture of what the final route may look like. And this ultimate path would lead me to finding myself. Change, it puzzled me through new areas of hardships, new dimensions of struggles that I myself did not know I was capable of handling. And in this process, it revealed bits of me I would have never discovered had I walked on a straight path. And in this maze, I got lost, frustrated. I felt like no decision, no right or left could help me find my way back. However, I ask you, can anyone ever lose in a maze? No. It is only a matter of time till you find your way out. And that is what kept me going 7 months ago. I returned home after writing my last board exam with the intent of giving my mother a very detailed itinerary of my next 20 days. When I was told we were going to move again in just 4 days, my plans came to a halt. But I should have seen it coming, right? When I was the most comfortable I have ever been, when I was finally making plans in a city that felt mine, when I was planning to reconnect with all my friends and all my hobbies that I had collected over the past years, I would have to pack up and leave. I crossed out this path on my maze and realized I have to start again. So I did. I got on that flight to Indira Gandhi International Airport, refusing to look out the very window that brought me there. I couldn't believe I was shifting. But if there's one thing, we must accept its change, because without it, we stay stuck in that same corner of the maze. Without that, we never get the chance to grow. I've realized that the maze is not dealing with one shift in the city or one difference in your routine. It's about finding yourself as you explore the changes that come into your life. And this dynamism, it does not throw our identities into question. Instead, it represents some of the most significant aspects of our lives. It gives us the chance to be something more. I may have shifted to Powai and joined art classes simply to socialize and make friends in my new society. But I walked out with 18 canvas paintings and a true passion for art. So the very factor that had been causing me to question my identity again and again, change, was the same that had been helping build it all along. Without which I would have never stepped out of my comfort zone. Without change, my 1,000 descriptions would have been limited to one. Every worldly example of a continued personal identity involves tremendous transformations. When we try to seek and maintain a definite identity, we betray our true nature to be fundamentally fluid. Self-modification through change is not a threat to personal identity. Instead, it reveals facets of one's true self. Lastly, I missed my first day of school here, and I never got the chance to answer my favorite question. Describe yourself. Hello, I'm Twisha Bajaj, and I'm a mosaic of everyone I have ever met. Hence, I will always be a work in progress. Thank you.
That's 12. 15th January 2023. I sat in the corner of the room. Just me, myself, and my dream of getting third place. The fear slowly crept in. What if I don't make it? What if the others are better than me? With thoughts like these racing through my mind, I sat down for my final search. One last chance to prove myself. Not just to the world, but to myself, that I, Arkesh Ravas, can be the best Rubik's Cube solver this country has ever seen. But suddenly, the nerves kicked in. My hands started to shake. My vision was blurry. I saw the cube and looked down at his hand. I was 1 second slower than the person in third place. I still remember the metro ride back home. The coach was empty, except for my mother and I. I turned towards her and I said, I want to win. I want to be the best. Though I was initially distraught, I channeled that disappointment into motivation. I knew the path would be tough. It would not be easy. But I made a promise to myself that I would come back stronger. When I was 10,
I saw someone solve the Rubik's Cube in my school bus for the first time. Back then, I did not know that such an insignificant incident would change my life forever. I have been speed cubing since 2019. I can solve any Rubik's Cube, from a 2x2 to a 15x15. I can solve one with one hand, and I can even solve one blindfolded. But my life, it revolves around this 12-sided puzzle called the Mega Mix, and how it became an inseparable part of my identity. Since then, I've spent hours learning about the puzzle, implementing new tricks and algorithms across 100,000 solves. I felt unstoppable, getting faster and faster each day. Indian Nationals 2023 was set to take place in December. A 3-day competition in Shillong, where the best cubers from all across the country would gather to compete, and the winner would become the national champion. I finally found purpose. I wanted to become the Indian national Mega Mix champion. But it was an unrealistic dream, because how could I, someone who failed to podium at a local Rubik's Cube competition, dream of getting first place at the nation's biggest stage? 15th December 2023. In the heart of Meghalaya, I was sitting in the competition hall. Just me, myself, and my dream of becoming the national champion. I had got in first place in the first round, beating the rest by a huge margin of 7 seconds. I felt confident. I felt it was easy, and that was my biggest mistake. By the evening, I was mentally exhausted. Heading into the final round, I felt the pressure. Not because of the audience, but because of the expectations I myself had set. My dream started to feel like a dream. At a Rubik's Cube competition, you get 5 solves every round. These 5 solves would determine who the national champion would be. My first 2 solves went terrible, but I hoped I would recover from that in the next 3 solves. But while I was submitting my cube for the 3rd solve, it broke. My Mega Mix, which I had been using for the past 11 months, shattered into bits of plastic on the ground. And as I gathered every single piece, all I could think of was self-doubt, because it took shape again. It led me to believe that I was determined to lose, just like I did 11 months ago. And history, like it always does, would repeat itself. I did have a spare Mega Mix, but unfortunately, it was much worse than the one I used. The damage was already done. My mind was not in the right place. All I could think of was how I failed 11 months ago. The next 3 solves were even worse than the first 2. I walked off stage and I felt my heart break. A few minutes later, my friend came up to me. He said the results had been. I lost, right? He looked at me, smiled and said, Arghya, you are the national champion. And in that moment, it felt like all the pieces of the puzzle had finally come together. A sense of relief flooded through me, and it felt as if the weight of the world was finally off my shoulders. As I stood on the top step of the podium, all I could think of was everything that had led up to this moment. All the sleepless nights and the long hours flashed before my eyes as I held the trophy in my hand. I had a smile on my face, one that came from within, one that was you. Despair, disappointment, and a broken cube were not enough to break my spirit. I had proven, not just to the world, but to myself, that I, Arghya Shravas, am the best Mega Mix solver in this country. My journey was full of twists and turns, quite literally. I faced a lot of setbacks, like failing a national record by just 0.03 seconds, losing countless competitions because of fear, fatigue, and terrible fortune. But something that set me apart was my intricate understanding of perseverance. I am not a prodigy. All my accolades and achievements are a testament of my hard work. I've seen people, especially teenagers like me, giving up on their dream. Yes, it's hard to constantly improve. It's hard to always succeed. And it's even harder to say, I will not give up. but perseverance and determination are what will carry you across the finish line. If I had quit that day, I would not be standing before you today as a regional champion, a national champion, and a multiple time state record holder. I persevered through long nights and bad days because 10-year-old me had a dream when he saw the Rubik's Cube for the first time. He wanted to conquer the unique world of speed cubing. He wanted to be the best.